Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us again. And if you're online on YouTube, welcome. We're here at the Baha'i International Community, and we want to just thank our partners, Baha'i International Community, for hosting us here today. It's a beautiful venue, and they've been very gracious and generous with their space and their time. We also like to thank the Suchi Foundation for supporting this session and for partnering with us. And we'd also like to thank the Southeast Climate and Energy Network, SEN, for supporting the entire event and for also sponsoring lunch today. Yay, I think everyone enjoyed it. And my name is Nelly Bizram. I'm the CEO and founder of AHAM Education. And I'm also NGO representative to the United Nations. And I'm excited for us to be hosting with all of these amazing partners our very first United Nations side event. And so the event title is Water for Justice, Healing and Action, Building Blocks of a New Resiliency Paradigm. And this morning we had a session about the importance of decolonizing water for water safety and for creating access and also for healing. So now we're moving into our second panel, which is elevating the Indigenous perspectives, the wisdom, and the practices that are currently being implemented in communities in the US and in Central America to really bring back a sense of the importance of water for life, water for healing, but also the importance of preserving our waterways as part of our way of being and our way of living life. So we're really excited to be here today, and I'd like to introduce someone very special who is going to open up this session like we did in the last session. We're going to start with a practice. We're all about practice first and explanations after. So Jason Keck is the co-founder of 7 Directions of Service. And he co-founded this organization with his wife, Crystal Cavalier. He's a board member of Benevolence Farm in Alamance County, North Carolina. And he's a former VP of Outreach for an international men's organization that focuses on successful families, careers, and communities. With a multiracial heritage of Native Americans, Choctaw Apache, French African Creole from the Louisiana and European side, Jason leads a quarterly men's cohort in the community focusing on Indigenous values in our curriculum, designed to tap into and restore imbalances in men. Jason is the president of the Alamance County Native American Caucus and the communication director of the 17 Rivers, North Carolina chapter of the American Indian Movement. So without further ado, I hand the baton to you, Jason. Thank you.
So Alito Chima Chukma, Yakoki Ishto, Achatasia, Oklasia, Anitasia, Atushkasia, Sahochifo Yat, Nita, Acho Halichi, Jason Keck, Sahochifo Yat, Okla Itushka, Chuhulo Li, Nabelia Chi, Anakma Abanoke. So with that simple introduction, I've just expressed 2 of our Indigenous values, understanding that our Indigenous values are very diverse, our cultures, our teachings, our beliefs are very diverse. There were hundreds upon thousands before contact and colonization. And so whenever I say anything, I'm speaking simply for the teachings I've been taught. And so the values that I've given you with that simple introduction are respect and trust. I told you who I am. I told you who I'm from. I told you some of the teachers that have taught me. And I've also expressed a love for you as creation, regardless of how long I've known you or if I've met you at all. Just an initial love for you as being fellows of creation. So the value that I really want to give is the generosity, because it's one that I hold high. In our cultures, you'll often find that there is a gift giving or a giveaway at most of our ceremonies, weddings, birthdays, even funerals. There is a giveaway of the community that comes to support the family, whether it's a joyous celebration, a grieving celebration, or an honoring celebration. And so it's kind of difficult in contemporary times because you'll have an event, you don't know how many people are coming, you're trying to figure out gifts, and they're usually gifts like blankets for warmth, or it might be like a tobacco bundle for good longevity. And so not knowing who was going to come here and not being prepared, not being in my state or my territory, I'm giving you gifts of a teaching. And so the teachings that I'm giving you are scientifically proven. We know this now. All humans get these qualities upon birth. But before we had scientific knowledge, we had these beliefs through stories, through handed down traditions, through philosophies, and through our teachings of creation. And so it's believed that 4 gifts are given to every 2-legged upon creation, just as the gifts of flight and song are gifted to our winged relatives, just as speed and a fur coat for the winter is gifted to our 4-legged relatives. 2-leggeds are given 4 initial gifts. And so the first one we get as soon as we enter this living physical world is breath. And so very quickly, I want to ask you to all take a breath. And just be reminded that this was the gift that keeps us physically healthy and sustains that physical health throughout our life. The second gift was the good mind, as we say. This was the psychological or mental healing gift. And the good mind, I'm just gonna, we're a limit of time, so I'm just gonna ask you to close your eyes for a minute and practice just a second of what we would call meditation. And meditation can be done either in an emptying of the mind and just clearing it, or even a reflection of the mind and just kind of like going through those things and sorting out what's needed and what needs to stay and what needs to be put aside. The third gift would be the heartbeat. And so that's the emotional gift we're given at heartbeat. And some cultures would say, many of ours and many other continental indigenous cultures would say, the heartbeat is the drum the Creator gives each individual. And so when the breath and the good mind aren't working for you, I always tell relatives to grab your hand and put it on your chest, feel your heart. You can do that now. And as long as that drum is still beating, it's gonna be okay. The fourth gift we like to say is the spiritual healing or spiritual maintenance, which is the voice. We've all been given a voice, and that voice, the reason it's the spiritual connection is because with that voice, we can speak, we can sing, or we can scream out to our understanding of creation and Creator and ask for help. And so that voice, we remind, especially the young ones, to never be afraid to use it. But our stricter elders, our grandmas and grandpas will say, always use it wisely, because that voice has power, could be used for good or bad. And so those are the 4 directions that almost all the philosophies from the northern top of Canada all the way down to the southern tip of South America, they're not exactly the way I just directed them, because I told you the cultures are so diverse, but these 4 directions can be found, and I've even found in African cultures that they have an understanding of those 4 directions. However, their stories came to bring them to us. We also have 3 more. So because we were very spiritual people, it's what 7 directions are. My wife and I's nonprofit was founded off of these 7 directions teachings. So the 5th direction would be above, and that gift that's given from that 5th direction is, well, let me start below. The 6th direction would be below. That's at our feet. And the gift that's given with that direction is the actual crying, water from our eyes. So the water from our eyes is an actual gift. It's healing. If we're crying for others, we're actually healing them. If we're crying for ourselves, we actually heal that way. And so that would be called the spiritual physical gift. So for all those 4 directions, there was a spiritual in each one of them. So the spiritual physical would be below. That's our mother that gives us all those physical things, food from seed, water, all of those things. That's the feminine. The masculine would be looking above. And in some psychological therapies, people dealing with anger issues, they will say the minute you start seeing that red, you look up and there's some kind of scientific thing in the brain that just calms you right out. And then just looking above calms the situation. But that gift would be silent prayer. So there's actually a gift of silent prayer, meaning you don't have to use that voice 4th direction. You can just think your prayer and ask for help that way. And that's a very powerful one. And that's the spiritual mental component. The final component would be the spiritual emotional component. That's the 7th direction within. And that value is different for whoever. So I told you that my favorite of those values is generosity. That's why I've given you this gift, which is really just reminders of these things that we all have and all have access to. But that 7th direction, it could be compassion. It could be, nurturing, all of these things, teaching, guidance, mentoring, all of those things come from that 7th direction, that spiritual, emotional. And so my final gift, I got a teaching from a young Akwesasne Mohawk Bear Clan woman yesterday in an Indigenous panel just like this one. And it was beautiful because she's from the same clan and the same nation that gifted me this right here, Akwesasne Mohawk. But she said that one of their teachings is to say, when you come up to someone that you don't know, especially she's used this in other countries, she'll say, the water in me respects the water in you. And I would say you can use that in this contemporary world. We're a little cautious about like, what do you want when you say like, and so respect is a good place to start. But if you're feeling really courageous, the water in me loves the water in you. And so just all 7 will start from the beginning. You can start and say, the breath in me loves the breath in you. You could say, the good mind in me loves the good mind in you. You could say, the heartbeat in me loves the heartbeat in you. You could say, the voice in me loves the voice in you. You could say, the prayer in me loves the prayer in you. And you could say, the water or the tears in me love the tears in you. Or you could say, the generosity in me loves the generosity in you. And with that, I will complete. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason, for that lovely reflection on not only the values, but these gifts that we all intrinsically have that come from such rich traditions. I think as we're in gathering for the water conference, we're not only wanting to bring forth the most foremost and innovative solutions that we see at the forefront of like technological and societal innovation, right? But we also have to honor and respect that which we already know, that which comes from our history that we've forgotten, we've left behind, and we seek to sometimes erase in the name of progress, right? And I think this panel, this conversation we're about to embark on is so beautiful because it's a lifting up and honoring of that which we know to be fundamentally true to all of us. No matter where we come from, we are Indigenous, right? And it's honoring this wisdom, honoring these insights through not only this panel conversation we're about to have, but the films that we're about to see as well, that we can come to deeper understanding of our true relationship with water and how we're able to solve our collective crisis together. So I'm really happy to be able to pass the floor over to Alexander Easdale, who serves as the Executive Director of the Southeast Climate and Energy Network, to serve as your moderator and take us away.
Thank you, Steve. Jason, wow. Again, met Jason and Crystal last year in Charlotte, North Carolina. At the SEN convening, we have this annual meeting in our network of 80 organizations in the Southeast. Dallas, you were there. And he wowed us then, and so did Crystal. And here we are again. So yesterday we planned our panel for tomorrow with Steve Chu and others. And Steve kind of summed it up by saying, talk about falling in love with water. And I thought about that. And I thought about being in love, you know, as I was walking over here. My wife and I are about to be married for 20 years. She's somewhere in this room. And we flew in a little plane. We're living in Panama, we're dating. And I fell in love with her. We flew over to this little island called Contadora. In one of those planes that sits like 8 people. And the plane got a flat tire when we landed. And we got on the same page in that trip. And I fell madly in love with her, and I still am. I feel the same way about water. Water has, and I've heard a lot of things the last few days, good and bad. You know, 70% of all fresh water is consumed by agriculture, for example. It's kind of really freaked me out. But also 70% of our body and our mind is made up of water, give or take. But I thought about water and how much sometimes splashing cold water in my face calms me down, you know, relieves anxiety, how much I love to drink water, how much I like to swim and play in water, and how valuable it is for transportation. And I'm so happy to be here. And I'm so privileged to be moderating this panel with this wisdom that you're about to hear. So I promise you, I'm not going to speak long, okay? I'm here as a student. I am going to introduce our panelists, but they have very extensive bios, which speaks to their expertise and their wisdom. I'm going to summarize, and y'all feel free to fill in. Okay, Laura, if you can, anything that I may miss is important. Also, I'm going to ask everybody who speaks to please speak slow, because Laura is translating. Okay, so try to speak slow, and I'm trying to remind myself as well. So in any case, so I'm going to start. Jason has already been introduced. His lovely wife is Dr. Crystal Cavalier Keck. She's a citizen of the Occaneechi band of the Saponi Nation, and she's dedicated the past over 5 years to defending her homelands against the Mountain Valley Pipeline Southgate extension. She's leading a campaign to bring rights of nature laws in North Carolina in order to protect the waterways and communities in the path of the pipeline. Crystal is a co-founder of 7 Directions of Service, along with Jason. She completed her PhD at the University of Dayton, focusing on social justice crisis of missing, murdered Indigenous women tied to gas and oil pipelines. This has led her to launch the Missing Murdered Indigenous Women Coalition of North Carolina. She also serves on the boards of Movement Rights, the Haw River Assembly, and is a policy director at Toxic Free North Carolina. And I also want to add, she's a member of the Southeast Climate and Energy Network. All right. We also have a really distinguished group as well from Honduras. Laura, voy a introducirlo un poquito, pero tú rellenas bien, ¿ok? Pues voy a tener que traducir de una acá, ¿está bien?
Sí.
Okay. Okay. Wildres Jennifer Rodriguez Wood was born in Bruce Laguna, and gracias a Dios, in Miskita, Honduras. She is the daughter of a fisherman and a homemaker, and the 5th of 6 children. Also an education, primary education teacher or 1st grade teacher, and a biologist, and will soon be doing a master's degree on protecting natural rights from the Universidad Autónoma en Madrid. I'll stop there. Laura, if you want to fill in anything else, or do I continue?
That's perfect. Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm here translating to Wildres, so you can go. Yeah.
Okay, she's amazing, by the way. She's a specialist in artisanal fishing with indigenous villages, and is working for a program with Swiss cooperation for economic development for fishermen in Mesquita. Okay. Now we're gonna move, and if you need to add anything, Laura, do so, but I want to speed it up so we can get to the film. All right, Laura. Laura, we can't cuss here, right? Because I'll start. She's an awesome filmmaker from Honduras, and she has received awards. For example, the International Film Festival in Austin in October 2022. Also in 2018 in Malaga, Spain, in the section of women's rights, she received a prestigious award, and she's received awards from the American Film Showcase, the Goethe Institute, the Locarno Industry Academy, Guadalajara. She's Miss International, Global. And Laura, if you can speak to some of your films, I'd rather you do it than me. So those are our panelists, and we have one more, last and certainly not least. And she's right here. Emilia, or Emily Epeti Miki, is the founder CEO of Dennis Miki Foundation. She's right there. And Efeti Ventures. You're from Cameroon, correct? She is a global facilitator, dynamic transformational speaker, writer, and fierce feminist. She's a humanitarian worker, peace builder, and philanthropist. Working on the front line, Emily has a proven record of developing sustainable programs, projects, and coordinating and facilitating the implementation of community development programs, forums, network coalitions, alliances, food focus groups, boot camps, outreach, and the projects and topics addressing gender equality, sexual and reproductive health rights, women and youth participation in processes, democracy and governance, fighting inequality, protection of human rights, and much, much more. Wow. So I'm summarizing their bios. You all fill in as you will, but I really want to get to the good stuff and stop talking. So can we give them just a quick round of applause? So we got a short film and then a couple of videos, and then we're going to have a discussion, and then hopefully we'll have a Q&A after that as well.
Yang nini Wildres Wood, yang pas biologa Miskita nara narsa, yang sika Bruce Lagunwina nara pauri mamiknanaikut family kinanaiku Reserva del Hombre y Biosfera de Rio Platano. Las Marías Mahta Auna, Pech Naniwiba Pliskakeikaya, Baja Biosfera Barba. Kupilukis na wal biosfera Rio Platano ba dukiara. Ba descombronando que ba na kuauya ba mani mata wal sipman kabia wal biosfera kana.
We're gonna share two
more shorter videos.
Inani washte, wopila wakan. Meni wachoni, aho matakwias. Some tribes would say water was the first gift the Creator gave us.
Let the spirit of the weaving waters into your heart.
And it was the most powerful element. It can douse flame, it can shape rock,
Life-giving power of
it can
water
nurture,
into your heart.
and it can replenish. a dehydrated living thing. It's only in the last 100 or 200 years or so that we've come up with all these ways that don't work in harmony with everything else and don't sustain. It's a great audacity that the Southgate Mountain Valley Pipeline extension would take on a traditional indigenous trades path, that they would do this. I just feel that this is very intentional, very malicious, a personal attack on our culture and community. To place your pipeline plan right smack on the trading path of our original nations of Monacan, Occaneechi, Saponi, Chiraw, Catawba. It's more than a slap in the face. It's actually a continuation of historic oppression and genocide to bring a poisonous structure through these territories, because the original communities cannot effectively advocate for themselves in resistance to this. Our existence since the beginning of creation is that all lives and all people and communities in this ecosystem work together in harmony. One could not live without the other. And so this is just how people existed, and it's what people understood, and it's what we've lost as a people. We've kind of put ourselves in the head of dominion, but even with that responsibility, even if that was true, how are we honoring that responsibility?
The weaving waters flow, the weaving waters see, the weaving waters flow, the weaving waters hear, the weaving waters flow. Let it teach us to flow.
When you're organizing for a movement and you're just one person, it can become tiring and taxing and problematic. But when you're organizing and you're educating people, you're building a team to help them understand the real issue of the problem. It's like one arrow. It can become broken, tattered, torn. But when you have a bundle of arrows, that's very difficult to break. And so that's what I want to build, is a collective of arrows. We're going to be a bundle of arrows so that we can stand strong and organize together. And then when we have to call upon each other in a community, we don't have to relationship build, because right now a lot of this is building relationship. I want people to understand that I'm here, you can trust me, and I'm going to make this as important in my life as it is in your life.
We want to leave a lasting solidarity and unity between, the community that has risen up to do this one action and future actions on this pipeline. But once these companies see that we have a community that's strong between West Virginia and North Carolina, and if they go somewhere, neighboring, we will jump in and help those folks too. But if they see that we've come together and that we don't care if we have different thoughts about things, different politics, different beliefs, different colors, different genders, but we all agree on this one thing, that we deserve consultation and consent. And when we say no, it's no. They will handle us a lot differently. Let this be our strategy of coming together. Let this be our strategy. Children, women, men, elders, creator, community protected inside. They can't beat it, folks. We just haven't practiced it. They thought they taught us to forget how.
All right. That was pretty cool, huh? All right, so the name of this panel is Elevating Indigenous Perspective, Knowledge, and Action for Water and Nature Conservation in the Americas. So what I want all of you to start thinking about here is, and we'll have a reflection at the end, is what are you going to do to support Indigenous communities in the Americas? I'm asking each person in here to give us at least one action they're going to take to support Indigenous communities. I want to start, I'm not going to ask a lot of questions. I want this panel to be interactive. And I do want to give space for folks in the audience to also ask a few questions as well. We have some brilliant minds here, so definitely I don't want to be the only one asking questions. I do want to talk a little bit about the rights of nature, including obviously animal and plant life, water. And I want to start with our friends from Honduras. Wildres, quiero que nos hable un poquito de los derechos de la naturaleza. Habían reflexiones muy buenas en tu video y me gustaría que nos hablen qué significa eso específicamente. También hablaste un poquito de la transición a la muerte, así que háblanos un poquito más específicamente sobre esos derechos y cómo también los defienden ustedes en su comunidad.
Sí, buenos días o buenas tardes, dependiendo de dónde nos estén viendo. Nosotros como indígenas hemos venido protegiendo y conservando nuestros recursos naturales por muchos años. Sabemos de los derechos o de qué nos proporciona la naturaleza, por eso es que la hemos venido cuidando.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you watching us. We, the Indigenous community, have been protecting the natural resources for many, many years because we have the awareness of what that means for us.
Para nosotros los indígenas misquitos, nosotros somos la naturaleza, no vemos la naturaleza como aparte, sino como un todo, donde están los bosques, el agua, los ríos, los animales, las plantas, los seres humanos, somos un todo, y nuestra cosmovisión se basa en el respeto mutuo, pana pana kulkan kalaka, le decimos.
Us, the Miskitu Nation, we think ourselves not apart from nature. We are the same. We are the rivers. We are the forests. We are the water. And we treat everything with respect. And she just said the word respect in the Miskitu language.
El respeto que tenemos nosotros con nuestra naturaleza es que ha hecho que tengamos nuestros recursos por mucho tiempo. Por ejemplo, si nosotros necesitamos cazar para poder alimentarnos, le tenemos que pedir permiso a los espíritus que manejan el bosque para poder adentrar en el bosque, para poder cazar, le pedimos este permiso a ellos.
As an example of how do we preserve this on our day-to-day, we ask for permission to the spirits that inhabit in the forest. We ask for permission if we need to hunt an animal so we can feed ourselves.
Y el permiso no solo lo pedimos para ir a cazar, sino que el permiso también se le pide a las plantas medicinales para que nos ayuden a sanar a las personas enfermas. También se le pide permiso al río cuando se va a pescar. Tenemos en nuestra cosmovisión indígena, tenemos lo que es el espíritu del agua, el espíritu del río. Entonces nosotros con todo respeto le pedimos al río que nos dé este permiso para poder pescar.
We don't only ask for permission to hunt. We also ask for permission to use the healing plants of nature so it can heal our fellow humans. We also ask for permission to the spirit of the water and the rivers so we can fish in their waters to feed ourselves.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
¿Está bien? Yeah, that's all.
Same question for you, Crystal and Jason.
So first, I just want to acknowledge that we are on the Lenape lands, and my auntie Clara Soaringhall, I met her 2 days ago, and so I just want to respect and honor her people. But right here, I have our relative right here at the water, and so I want everybody to acknowledge and just say hello to the water. It's in a glass, so it's not imprisoned, right, in plastic. So we recognize water is alive, water has memory, water is a relative. And everywhere you go, you should stop and speak to the water. I couldn't get this water out here, so I have a fence around it. But usually I try to get as natural as I can with the water. But for our community, and that's my cousin back there, Makita, my family and community, we've lost years and centuries of our indigenous knowledge related to like traditions and customs because of colonization and settler systems. But we're working hard to bring this back to our indigenous brothers and sisters in the community. But we recognize as a whole that we have to reject these things that are killing us. And I started my water journey about 5 years ago with Elder Sharon Day. And she told us that, you know, we're 70% water. And we were doing a walk, where's that, Lake Michigan? From Lake Michigan to the Great Lakes of Lake Michigan to the Chicago River. And we were doing a Nimbe walk, which is the Anishinaabe water. And I was gifted a pail just yesterday from some woman in the UN from Canada. And we prayed with the water, and she told me, and that's kind of been my guiding principle, that when you can pray for the water, you can learn to pray for yourself. And when you learn to pray for yourself, you can learn to love yourself. And when you can learn to pray and love for yourself, then you can learn to love and pray for your neighbor. And so that's how I always try to start things off whenever we're doing a walk or how we are in life. And then what I've noticed on this journey, because Creator has taken me on a crazy journey, Jason and I, for the last, 5 years, and 6 years. But we've been to several different nations, and what we found is each of their waters have been affected, but we all have the same indigenous principle, like our sister here from Honduras. We always respect the water. We treat it as a relative. And so Jason and I, for the last 2 years with 7 Directions of Service, we wanted to bring this responsibility, right, to everybody. Because as humans, we have a responsibility to nature, to treat nature as a relative, not treat it as we have domain over it. Like we've always been taught, like, oh, it's beneath us. No, it is us. We are nature, and we have to start learning that. And so what we're doing is we're educating small numbers of people to educate others. So we're empowering you to go out and spread this message to others, because in order for us to stop what is happening with climate change and pollution of our water, we have to educate people, because as people will say, oh, my voice doesn't matter. No, it matters. It matters so much. It matters in voting. It matters in what you say about water, because this colonial system is built off of rights. And we want to give the rights of the water. We want to give that so the water can have a say if something is polluting it, or some type of corporation is hurting it, or even given the rights to the earth or to the forest, because when an extractive industry comes in and rapes the land, it is essentially raping women, because we are water. We bring life into this world. We, as Jason said, water is the first gift. Everybody is born into water. You have that connection, and you just have to remember. Jason.
I can't do better than that.
Amelia?
Okay, I can go.
Yeah.
Right. Hi, everyone, and I celebrate the water in you, which means I followed up from what Jason said. I want to bring a very different perspective coming from an African indigenous background. In my community in Cameroon, where I live, that's in sub-Saharan Africa, we kind of respect water, but it's mostly used as also a source of living. For instance, where I live in a town called Limbe, you have the Atlantic Ocean that passes through. So it connects us to Equatorial Guinea, Nigeria, and all of that. So it's mostly used for fishing as a source of livelihood. The culture for using water as a means of prayer is not really promoted because we live around a place, a society where religion has come in with the thought of Christianity, where the traditional methods of believing in water as a source for power and everything is seen as evil. So the connections that we have to water most often is, for instance, I grew up loving water. I always used to just like go sit by the sea and just sit quiet and meditate. I didn't know I was meditating, but I was just that connected to water. When I walked home from school with friends, each time we walked past by the river or the sea, I'll tell them, give me a minute, I'll stop by, look into the water, count fishes and everything. It was always strange, like, why are you doing that? I didn't know what it was until I started doing meditations recently and doing a lot of research. And then I got to understand that I'm connected to water. And in one of my trips, I met someone from Ghana. And when I told her I was born on a Sunday, she was like, oh yeah, water spirit, because everyone born on Sunday in my country is called by a particular name, because Sunday borns are people that are connected to water. Then I told her, maybe that's why I'm so drawn to water. But then we don't have that connection that is documented. And one of the things is maybe because we don't do a lot of research around it, or maybe because people are not supported in that community to do that, or even believe in the protection of that really primary source of life. So most often it's just used as a means to stay or get food, because it's a community that has a high level of poverty, and which is also connected to the story of slavery, because next to my community, like a 1 hour drive, is an indigenous village called the Bimbia village, where the slaves that left from Cameroon were carried through the water to other countries several years ago. So there's just a negative connotation and relationship to water. So most often water is seen as a source of pain, because those who try to swim or even just go play around water die from just being around the water. And then sometimes we have what they call Mami water spirit. That's in broken English. So Mami water is like meme. So we call it Mami water. So one who is connected to water is either seen as evil, like a witch. So you're not instead seen as one who carries power. But more or less people try to drift away from you because it's seen as you have too much negative energy or power. So it brings me to a connection to what they just shared here about how the insects see it positively as a source for healing. But for us, like in my tribe, the Bakweri, if you are someone who is connected to water, there's a name called Liengo, which means Mami water, like a meme. So it's not really a positive kind of thought or naming, or they kind of like name you when you're connected to water. So it's really interesting just to have this conversation and see how we are all connected in different places across the world and understanding it and using it differently. And I'm really happy to be here for us to share and see how we can work together. Just like I saw earlier from Jason's video, building movements around indigenous people from across the world, because if we want to protect in Americas, we have to be connected across the globe to increase our voices, because the voice in Honduras may be small, but if we all collectively from across the globe put our voices together, then we will be able to do something strong that can touch different decision makers. And I'm really grateful for AHAM Education for bringing us here, because this is already a platform for creating spaces like that.
Thank you, Emilia. Very different perspective, and I'd like for us to talk and learn more about it. I have a specific question for you two. In terms of the Mountain Valley Pipeline and those fights, can you speak a little bit to some of the allies, non-tribal allies that you work with or have worked with, if any?
So we worked with SIN, of course, Rural Beacon Initiative, William Barber III, Poor People's Campaign. We worked with the Alliance of Native Seed Keepers. We're traditional seed keepers where we keep seeds And we protect the seeds that are non-genetically modified. We have a seed that is about 800 years old that has been gifted to us from other tribal nations. We've worked with exposure labs, the Haw River Assembly, Howard Appalachian Voices, the Center for Earth Rights, the Center for Earth Ethics, Indigenous Environmental Network, the American Indian Movement, Education, just recently, Native Movements, Tiki Alum, and many others. We would love to work with Steve. But we worked with so many organizations to get Sierra Club, usually the big green organizations when it comes to these pipelines. And so we've had to give an Indigenous perspective because it's so colonized, right? And I will tell you, people in North Carolina probably think Jason and I are probably the craziest people because we're pretty radical. We're not, I don't even know what to say. We follow the red road, right? We follow Earth. And we try to break down those barriers that has colonization that has happened for the last 500 years here in the United States that has suppressed Black and Indigenous people in the communities. And they have built up these systems that scare us from water, make us afraid to just be ourselves with the water. And it's a process, but we're breaking through. Like we've seen so much progress in the last 5 years. We've seen people join our movements. Yeah, would you say, Jake? Go ahead. Yeah, non-Indigenous as well. Do you want to add anything? He's nervous.
So I don't think saying no to your way of life is radical. So I love when my wife gets passionate, and I love all the words. And I just been learning even in this thing, like we're in the United Nations, so everybody's country is coming together. They've all been colonized, like we've all been colonized. Those Europeans were indigenous at one time, and they understood plant medicine. They didn't have a pharmacy. They didn't have a big pharma. They didn't have a chemical process of taking that plant and changing it. So the memory is just farther away from them because that colonization happened just on their little island and their own little kings and serfs and peasants. They went through all of that, right? And they persecuted their own folks, killed, genocided their own folks. So by the time those folks were expanding to other land bodies, they didn't know any, they had forgotten. So they didn't know any different. And so what I tried to do, which seems radical in the Jim Crow South, is just remember, right? Like I wasn't raised with my language that I introduced myself. My grandmother, when she was in her last years and started losing her memory, she started speaking in the language that she spoke as a little girl that she was hushed before she even entered the school system. And that's how I was like, okay, so I know that's Choctaw and Numpa. There's like 9 different tribes and probably 4 different languages in Louisiana right now. So we were able to narrow it down, and we were able to narrow down her family and my grandfather's family. Anyway, it's remembering. And so like when I hear my sister say that the church or whatever, that colonization has scared those African indigenous people, I feel it. It's not unique, although it's probably been happening a lot longer, right? Because they were taking the resources there first. They saw that motherland as a, in their way, a resource or a thing to steal, a thing to take, a thing to consume. And so like the longer you've had this consumption energy, this we call it a bad spirit. So like how they call us thinking about water and being connected to water, they call us witches or bad spirit. We think that colonization, that greed, that is a bad spirit.
Yeah.
That is the bad spirit. And so that's all that comes from my truth right now. I'm trying to, I got a lot of compassion going with my relative over here. I got compassion with my relative in Honduras. all the human beings of the two-leggeds got to get together and remind each other. And then those that are less close to their indigenous memory, they'll get it, right? It's gonna be hard, right? They were excellent at that strategy of erasure, excellent at that strategy of genocide, excellent at that strategy of miseducation, exploitation, to whereas they taught us how to exploit our own environments, right? And they got us saying, sure, you can come into my neighborhood and poison that water that I go fishing in every weekend. Just give me a buck. That buck has like so little value when you're talking about grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-great-grandchildren that you'll never meet. So I'll just stop there.
Thank you, Jason. I do have one question from Wildres, and then after that, I'd like to open it up to the floor for any questions from the floor. Wildres, can you speak a little bit of the, we had a conversation yesterday about the spirit of water, and I believe you said it was feminine. Laura, yo le hago una pregunta, Si me han puesto el espíritu del agua y la naturaleza y lo que me dijiste ayer que era más femenino, ¿puedes explicar un poquito qué significa eso?
Sí, en nuestra cultura nosotros tenemos varios espíritus. Está los espíritus del aire, los espíritus del bosque y el espíritu del agua. Todos estos espíritus son femeninos porque siempre la parte femenina es la que se da más a proteger, a conservar. Entonces nuestros espíritus por eso son femeninos.
Yes, we have in our Miskitu culture a lot of spirits, like the spirit of the air, of the forest, of the water, and they are all feminine figures. They are all women and feminine figures because this is more representative of protection and conservation, nurture.
Los espíritus del agua que tenemos, nosotros le decimos Liwa Mairin. Mairin es mujer. Entonces es un espíritu mujer que está protegiendo y conserva, bueno, más que todo protegiendo los recursos que tenemos en nuestros ríos, en nuestros mares, lagunas. Entonces estos espíritus uno debe de pedirles permiso a ellos para poder pescar y ellos son los que nos dicen más o menos cuánta es la cantidad que se puede pescar.
Specifically, we have the water spirit named in Miskitu language, Liwa Mairin. Mairin means woman. So this is the spirit of the water, of the rivers, of the sea, of the lakes. And this is the spirit that we ask for permission to fish from these water bodies.
Estos espíritus están muy encadenados a todo lo que es la parte de la naturaleza, porque igual nosotros tenemos que tener guías. Por ejemplo, son nuestros guías que nos dicen está bien pescar tanto o está bien cazar tanto, deben de llevar un control en todo esto. Pero sí hay muchas comunidades donde ya se ha ido perdiendo este respeto hacia estos espíritus que tenemos.
All of these spirits that are related to nature are a sort of guidance, because we need guidance to control how much we consume from our own nature for our living. But I have to say that in some communities, this is being lost, this respect. Every day it's getting lost. Sorry? Yes.
Gracias, Wildres. So a few themes here. One, that I'm getting is asking for permission. Seeing ourselves as in a holistic fashion as part of nature and not separate from it, which is the mechanistic worldview that we've been taught and justifies us exploiting things that we shouldn't. I'd like to open it up to see if anybody has any questions from the audience. Yes.
Yeah,
And if you introduce yourself before you ask a question.
my name is Mark Favors, Common Valley Clean Water Coalition, military veteran whose family was poisoned for 30 years in Colorado with toxic PFAS chemicals. And, one question I want to ask, like my sweatshirt, one thing I've tried to do with the African-American community is, it's clear in this country, water kills more people than gun violence, but the reaction is totally different. In my hometown, the Air Force, they admitted they contaminated. And another thing, when we're at the UN, let's be clear, the #1 polluter in this country is the United States military. I mean, that's clear. I mean, they've testified before Congress with PFAS, they've contaminated over 400 communities in this country alone, which they've admitted under oath. So, but that's a different, battle, because all my friends, when they want to talk about corporations, everybody's on board. But then when you say the Pentagon, one thing I learned, I testified in Congress for Actor Mark Ruffalo, everybody's afraid of the Pentagon. Even in Congress, there's very few people that will just challenge them. But one thing I want to know is how can we get our communities to kind of look at pollution the same way they look at gun violence? Because I tell people, like with Breonna Taylor, people get upset. Well, when the Air Force admitted they dumped toxic chemicals, so they entered my grandparents' house, just state sanctioned violence. They just entered them through the faucet, as opposed to a batter ram. They're both dead from those actions. And I think that's one thing that I've tried to educate our community about, because you're talking about police violence, you're talking about 1,100 people a year. Pollution in this country is at least 200,000 per year, but we just don't have the outrage, we don't have the energy that we see with gun violence. So that's one thing, that I've been trying to work on with, African-American communities.
Thank you for that.
I'm sorry for that. We have PFAS too. Right now, we're fighting chemors, and we're also suing the EPA about that. The one thing that you can do in your community is, I don't know if your community knows or understands that PFAS is everywhere, right? It is in your food, it is in your toilet paper, it is in your toothpaste, it is in your toothbrush, everything that you touch, PFAS is in. And I don't think they understand how serious it is until they develop a cancer. And by then it's too late, because it takes, years to develop this in your body. And so one way I have started is to educate people, right? It has to start small. We have a campaign at Toxic Free called What's in Your Water? And it's small because we don't get many participation, but what we do in our organization, 7 Directions, we go and we door knock, right? The same that people door knock for voting, we go and door knock and say, hey, this is important. Have you tested your well water? Have you tested your city water? PFAS tests are really expensive. That's why right now we're suing the EPA, because we want Comores to test the people's water in Wilmington. The one PFAS test that I purchased was $300. We can't afford, communities can't afford that. But if we can get studies from universities, that's the one thing I can say. Reach out to your local universities.
Oh yeah, we have studies.
Have they been participating in those studies?
Oh yeah, but the problem is we'll get the studies, but as far as the compliance, the Pentagon just doesn't comply. That's the issue. People
Have
come.
you made an appointment to meet with them? We just met with Jamie Pinkham from the Army Corps of Engineers. Like, have you reached out to schedule
Oh yeah,
appointments?
we've had Zooms, because we're part of the National PFAS Coalition. So we've had, we've had, Emily Donovan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But has she gone to the Pentagon? Has she gone and scheduled a meeting? Like, we literally were knocking on doors.
Oh yeah, we have. But it's a difficult situation, because the economics, I tell people, if you see the movie Dark Waters, people got upset with DuPont because they employed 3,000 people in the city. At that time, I think worldwide, DuPont may have employed 50,000 people. In Colorado Springs alone, the Department of Defense employs 80,000 people just in my city alone. So, my mother raised me by herself, so she had to, she worked for I joined the Army. We're all Department of Defense, so it's just more of a fear. But we do have the studies, we have the CDC, we have the University of Colorado, we have all that, but get the compliance that's just a whole different ballgame.
So First, I want to introduce you to some folks that are right in front of you, some great folks that taught me something this morning in the first panel, which is we've been conditioned with all of those things that they stole from us. They stole our relationship with water as peoples of color. And so there is an amazing team of folks that have funds to go in communities and make sure that the parents and grandparents aren't scared of the water. And then the children aren't scared of the water. And when you get a community back in relationship with that water, then they will see that they need to defend it. They'll see that like this thing is sacred to us. And then when it comes to that point where they're ready to defend, you brought up the economic fear that they always play, like, well, we're just gonna take your jobs from you, or we're just gonna fire you, we're gonna blacklist you. I stopped worrying about that when I realized that, and I'm 51 now, about 10, 15 years ago, I said, my whole life, no matter who was president, Republican or Democrat, I've been poor. No matter if I kept my mouth shut or if I stood out and said, that's wrong, I've been poor. No matter who, no matter what great idea came from the Pentagon, it ain't changed me or my family or my community's economics one bit. So I'll err on the side of too much voice, and you gotta build that courage in the community. When you tell the community, when was the last time you got an award for being silent economically? When was the last time you thrived? You had a fat Christmas with gifts under the tree for the grandkids because you kept silent. We never get that. We've never got it for hundreds of years. So you build that confidence up, and it's gonna start in small. Believe me, if we did it in these communities that had never left the Jim Crow South, and we had these people come into these regulatory meetings, grandmothers that had never spoke out in their life, and we started having some success. So I'd like to get your contact, and I'd like you to meet these folks that are bringing water back to our folks.
Thank you, Jason. Amelia, quickly, and then we'll move on to another question.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring two contributions based on experience. There is need to use the media rightly, or I don't know how we can influence the media as civil society. Because one thing I saw here when he asked was that the media is focusing on the gun violence and focusing less on the water violence or other things that are causing harm to people that have the data, because research has already shown that these things are happening. So maybe we need to start doing a lot of media campaign. It can be local media campaign in local languages, social media campaign, advocacy campaigns, because these are things that will get the information out there. The gun violence, yes, there may be a shooting and then it shoots one child or kills one, and then it's all over media, headline news. But then water is killing at least 200 people per day. It's not on headline news. And this data is there. It's all collected, the medical institutions are collecting it. So it's time for us to massively get into the media and start putting these things out there. That way we start telling people, speak for what is yours, because water is something that we all use, all share. And it's so connected to every one of us, irrespective of where we are. Because even in Cameroon, when we do work, we do a lot of campaign. And one other area I wanted to point out is movement building. From Jason's work, he spoke about indigenous movement building in his community, but I really want us to work together from wherever we are. I don't know what Aham Education is planning with this, but if we can start some movement that brings us from all different aspects and sectors, then we can start making our voices loud. Because I've been in the UN the last 2 weeks for CSW, and one of the things we've been asking these days as civil society is we don't want side events anymore. The states and everything should come and hear from us civil societies, and we should not be side events. We should be the high level events happening, because we are the ones working on the ground. Yeah. Start taking action. We need to start, like, we are creating spaces for ourselves, but we are here as civil society. Where is the state actors here to listen to what we are bringing as feedback? They are not there. They have closed door events and we are not allowed in as civil society. We need to ask for our own space at high level so that they hear from us and also get to hear what is happening in the ground. Because we have all of these amazing ideas and challenges. We work with the people, And with the people at the government, we vote the people. And if we don't do that, even they who are at the top will be faced with challenges. Because in Cameroon, I was sharing yesterday at my event, and I said, the British High Commissioner to Cameroon made a tweet about the fact that he had stayed for 2 weeks without water and his staff had kept bringing him buckets of water to his house. So that's him at the top. And if we think that because we are presidents, senators, ministers, we are not affected, then we are joking, we are all human. And water, we all drink water. And the day we don't have water, then we all are in trouble.
We're not around if we don't have water.
Yeah.
So the two things there on the international forum, not pushing aside, civil society, or having more representation from the fossil fuel industry and the civil society in the COP meetings, for example. We are doing a lot of movement building work here in the United States and globally. Our network is regional, but there's also a national network called the U.S. Climate Action Network. There are multiple coalitions as well. We have a project called Green South for Green New Deal, which is a really cool movement building piece in 5 southern states, the Gulf South states and Puerto Rico. So I think there's a lot that we can talk about offline. And there's a lot of people in this room actually that we definitely want to talk to you, especially being from Africa. Quick question, another question, and don't forget that we have Wildres as well available. Anybody have a question?
I just wanted to make a quick comment too. Thank you so much for what you said, Emily. Being part of this international system, we have to remember that it was created in a post-colonial context. And so even the voice that we have to fight for. So we are excited we got approved for a side event, but thanks to the Baha'i Center and to Suchi, we have a place to do it because we weren't approved inside. And beyond inside is, like you say, the high-level forums, because that's really where the stakeholders that can provide the resources to do something about this are sitting. So we're in a better place and we're going to continue to grow. With respect to what Aham Education can do for the UN, in the UN Water Action Decade, there is a process where NGOs that are ECOSOC accredited can submit a partnership commitment, and we've done so. So the partners that are pretty much putting on the side event, Aham Education, Diversity and Aquatics that Jason was referring to a moment ago, the Southeast Climate and Energy Network, Wildres Wood, their organization, Prawanka, Black Cat Media, who is Kathleen Dean, who's here, whose film we screened previously in the previous panel. We have a water action commitment to do the work on the ground. So pretty much the work we're already doing, but we're scaling that up. And it's the beginning to engage partners. So with the work that we're doing here, with this event, and with the one day that we have left at the UN and the ongoing process, the ongoing journey is through that water action commitment. So the conference is just an opportunity to tell the story. But beyond here, we're going to continue to work together because the Water Action Decade ends in 2030. So we have 7 years to meet some targets together. So I invite anyone that wants to be part of that process to just reach out to us.
Dallas, you have
I just have a quick question. My name is Paulina Raniecka. I am a researcher for the Vrije Universiteit in Amsterdam, and I'm an affiliated researcher for an EU-funded project as well. My question is about tokenism. So we are obviously at a very high stakes conference, and this is a very much open question. Very often there's an issue of including Indigenous speakers, or also say youth speakers, more to tick the boxes rather than actually give them a platform. And I wanted to ask you how to offer you the space to actually elevate your voices effectively, how to do it in events, conferences like this, but also in research. It's a little bit more specific in my field, writing also about Indigenous peoples, how to do it effectively.
I would start by saying, have those groups lead. We've had campaigns in the Southeast, for example, making a major utility like Duke Energy clean up coal ash sites, coal ash ponds throughout the state. And it was led by Indigenous groups and by grassroots groups, backed by Sierra Club and Southern Environmental Law Center and so on. So that would be my quick answer to your question. Anybody else have?
And when you want to partner with traditionally indigenous folks that you recognize have generationally stewarded and protected those responsibilities of the environment, you always ask them for their help. There was always, from the education side, from the political side, from the environmental green side, big green, it's always, like you said, it's a tokenism, it's a check a box. It's a have them sit there, give them 5 minutes while Coca-Cola has an hour. It's always, so for one, you might not even be getting the right people. So our elders are the ones that have most of that traditional knowledge that they share with us. They won't even come if they don't trust you. They can smell tokenism. They can smell, you know, looking down on them. They know all of that. They have longer generations of dealing with it than we have. So you might be getting the wrong people at the table if you're not recognizing we need you. The world is suffering. Whether you understand the world to be your grandmother, your Mother Earth, or a relative, or a thing with spirit, we can scientifically understand that this rock, if that's how you hold it, is suffering. And some of these folks have an answer because for thousands of years, they held a responsibility to solve these things. They've gone through crazy weathers, droughts, storms, floods, and they always come back. No matter who they lose in their community, we still have a responsibility to make it better. And so if you have any influence or somebody asks you the question, say, this is what one of the younger indigenous persons of color suggested. Ask for help. Recognize that you don't know something. Just because you bought and paid and maybe been educated in something, educated, right?
Yeah, and I would add also the financing piece. Provide money to these organizations, and at least for their expertise. And don't take that for granted. Wildres is a researcher. So Wildres, te paso la palabra ahora. Please talk slower because by now Laura is probably exhausted. And then beyond that, we have about 15 minutes. So if anybody else has questions, I would say questions on statements. We have Dallas, you, and then you on stack, okay? So go ahead with this.
Not statements.
Try to short questions.
Como biólogo.
Okay.
Sí, dale.
Ok, bueno, la investigación es muy importante también para tener datos que nos digan realmente qué es lo que está pasando en nuestras zonas, por ejemplo, en este caso en nuestras áreas protegidas, qué está pasando con el bosque, qué está pasando con el agua, porque sabemos que si se están dando de escombros, todo esto lleva a la pérdida del agua.
I believe research, it's key for us, having data from our territories so we can understand what is exactly going on that is affecting the water is really important.
Algo que quiero agregar y escuchando también a los demás compañeros que estuvieron opinando es que nosotros en la Miskitu o los grupos indígenas que vivimos en la Miskitu tenemos muchos ríos, muchas fuentes de agua, pero hasta el momento no hay ni una comunidad que tenga agua potable.
Something I want to add, and I want to listen the people here that has been talking. We in La Miskitu in Honduras, we have a lot of rivers, we have a lot of water, but we don't have a system of drinking water, of clean water to drink. I want to hear about this with you.
Y al no contar con agua potable, lo que se está haciendo es que hay muchas enfermedades, los niños tienen muchas enfermedades estomacales más que todo, porque no contamos con este sistema y al final hemos sido un pueblo abandonado por los gobiernos, que lo poco que estamos haciendo es porque nosotros lo queremos hacer, porque nosotros como indígenas estamos luchando día a día por tener cambios en nuestras comunidades, por proteger nuestro espacio, por proteger nuestro territorio donde vivimos.
So this the consequence, there's a lot of disease in our children, specifically stomach disease, because of the dirty water we have for drinking. We as a territory within Honduras, we have been completely abandoned by the government. And the few things we have is because we, as Indigenous, organize ourselves to do it.
Sabemos que el agua es vida, que nosotros somos agua, nuestro cuerpo, todos nosotros somos agua, pero al final, igual como pueblos indígenas, el gobierno está tomando alguna responsabilidad con todo esto que está pasando, pues creemos que no. Entonces, las responsabilidades las estamos tomando nosotros como pueblo. Nosotros estamos haciendo esfuerzos para poder tener agua limpia.
Even though we know that water is life, that we are water, that we need water, the government is not doing a public policy on this. So that's why we are taking charge of this.
Thank you, Wildres and Laura. Excellent. Dallas.
I see. I talk a lot.
Yes, sir.
Well, it was a statement, but since you corrected me, I think that one of the things we have to do is, the research is fine, but what are we doing with it? How are we disseminating this research to people? We have a film like what Kathleen had produced today. We take a film like that and let's raise money to make sure it has access points so more people get to see it. That way we get, with awareness, then we have movement. With movement, we part the river, we move the mountain. So I would just bring to the attention that maybe we need to look at funds for different things. Media is one of them. There are people that will fund media that won't fund research.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so that's my.
Yeah, I'll even go, thank you for that. I'll even go further. I was in a Justice 40 conference, invited by Dr. Robert Bullard, who's a father of environmental justice, or the concept of environmental justice. And he's talking about all his friends who are people of color, who they have their own research team. They do their own research. They're not waiting for the government or somebody else to do the research in their communities to tell them what the research says. So I think that builds upon your point, I think, quite well, because that's true. And then what to do with that research is critical. And I think the financing piece is one piece that's crucial to that. Absolutely. Question.
I wanted to ask Wildres a question. So if I understood correctly, the Miskitu people have no access to drinking water right now. And I'm just wondering, so how are you managing? What are you doing to try to make the water drinkable for your people?
Sí, bueno, no tenemos agua potable, entonces dependiendo de las comunidades en las que nos encontremos, una de las formas es que para que el agua esté limpia, es quizás agua de río la que se bebe o de algún caño, como le decimos nosotros, lo que hacemos es hervir el agua.
So yes, like I said, we don't have a system of clean water, you are correct. So what we do now, we get water from the river or from another like tiny water source, but we need to boil water to drink the water.
And then that doesn't, still getting sick. They're boiling it, but the children are still getting sick.
La hiervan, pero todavía la gente se enferma.
Sí, porque no toda la gente la pone a hervir, algunos la toman así al natural, otros la ponen a hervir, otros le ponen cloro, pero aún así la gente sigue enfermándose.
Yes, because not everyone boils the water. Some people do, some don't. They just drink it from the river. And some other people use cloro, which is like a chemical substance. But yes, people are still getting sick.
Yeah, this isn't just happening in Honduras, it's happening in the richest country in the world as well. For example, Flint, Michigan, and Jackson, Mississippi recently, and many other places. You had a question?
Thank you for your knowledge that you share with us. I am Diana and I'm an Indigenous woman from Bolivia.
And I
Pero
can
de
feel
Bolivia.
that because we are suffering similar problems.
Tenemos
In my indigenous community, I am saving a lake with traditional knowledge of my indigenous community because this lake is polluted by the mining activities. And I know how important is our traditional knowledge to heal our nature, our Mother Earth. But also, like you mentioned, we need to look for more allies, like a global network. We are privileged because we are in this space, and there are many indigenous sisters who came to this space, and it's difficult for us, for example, because we can speak very well in English, and this is the colonization too, and how we can advocate in these international spaces. So I think that, like you mentioned, it's important after these meetings, I don't know, we can propose, for example, different solutions. Not only the high levels can, I don't know, propose something. We need to propose and we need to organize. I don't know, what do you think about that? Or if you are working on that, like build a global network, like indigenous sisters and brothers.
Yes, true. I want to come to that, and then I think AHAM education will also come in. I think that's why Kino is, because AHAM is actually working on a statement that has to be submitted because the UN also gave a platform to submit statements like proposals. I think the deadline is today, right?
I actually have it open and I'm changing it as we're speaking.
Okay. Good. So actually it's for organizations with EcoSoc. I don't know if there are others, but there's a collective statement I have in which will all contribute our voices. There are different platforms to send contributions, but now it takes me back to the last contribution he made about, which is policy related. We have all these good policies and laws and recommendations we are making, but holding people to action, especially governments, like he said, that the Pentagon, they're not complying. So we just keep making proposals. Even in Cameroon, there are so many things happening that you make good proposals and recommendations. There are good laws. Like at the end of this water conference, they'll come up with good recommendations and action steps. But when it comes to the reality, what is causing the trouble? For instance, the chemical weapons, they are polluting water more than anything else. There's a lot of money being used to prepare them or make them. Now, to take good steps or take action, they need to stop that process, right? So now when it comes to the whole economics of war, which is where peace building and everything comes connected to protecting water, we start seeing that what needs to be taken as actions are not easily, because it's kind of like the power, the G5, the D, and all of that. How do we push these things? It's good that we have spaces like this. For instance, like me, a young woman speaking, when it connects to hers, the people who are there taking names, like she said, are not saying these things as they have to be said, because high-level events are happening, and in those halls, there are young people, there are people who are maybe just there to tick boxes. They're just sitting and taking notes. They're not making the correct contribution. So we really need to start changing mindsets, awareness creation. Yeah.
Thank you, Emily. I gotta do a time check. We have about 5 minutes.
I just want to say I want to respond. I'm sorry, what's your name?
Diana.
Diana.
Yeah.
So Diana, Crystal and Jason went to a side event that was hosted by, there's a major NGO group within the UN system. NGOs could come together. I learned this from Steve. So I'm talking like I know now, but I just learned this from Steve. And we are working with different NGO groups. And maybe Steve, you have some more that you can share about this, but there is an Indigenous NGO group that put out a major statement, which I think Jason has a copy of. So all we have to do is sign on to that. And if you don't have ECOSOC status through AHAM Education or even through Suchi, if they're signing on to that statement, you have a voice there. That's the political process. The other way, which is the way that we really focus on, is to do the work regardless, right? And so the Water Action Commitment has actually specific tasks and targets. So after this conference and these conversations, what we're going to do is, anyone like you voice something that's really important, we're going to continue to modify and refine that action commitment to include all of these actions. And then we're going to go to the funders and to some of the institutions that are present here, and we have exposure labs in the room. I don't want to call them out, but that can provide funding to do the work that we say we want to continue doing.
All right, we're basically out of time. I asked everybody at the very beginning to think of an action to support Indigenous communities and water. So I hope you all thought about it. I'd like to go. And then after we're done, if we can stay seated for a minute, we take a group picture. This is a very impressive turnout. So I'll start. The network, the Southeast Climate and Energy Network, does not have enough Indigenous participation. Something my colleague Dallas has pointed out to in the past. You all are here, but we need more. We need more. Okay, so that's my commitment, is to help make that happen. Ellie.
I think what I just said is my commitment to continue and to continue to open the door and to be a connector and an avenue for our place.
So on behalf of Tsiji and the Tsiji team, I think one thing we strongly believe in is ensuring that wherever we are, that Indigenous representation and voices are present. And so recognizing that we're very privileged to be in spaces that oftentimes others cannot walk into. And so trying to hold that door open a little larger to make sure that more people can come into that space and bring voices that we know are as important, if not more important, to be heard in this moment with key decision makers.
Ms. Mara Cunningham and many others have pointed out, even today, Ms. Wildres has pointed out that the Indigenous peoples are the only ones with a proven track record of knowing what exactly to do to not only hold the continued health of our land, what exists, but to heal it back to being healthy. And therefore, with every opening, job invitation, position opening, I think we should be recommending both researchers, developers, and policymakers of the Indigenous descent to take those positions and hold those positions so that it can be a central voice in making future decisions, because those who are holding it have proven that they don't know what they're doing. And if they do know what they're doing, it is for harm.
I work in two fields, medical and creatives, and I guess my commitment from here is to inspire the creatives I know to produce products that will tell these stories and help them find ways to make those stories even more amplified.
So my commitment is to continue my own path in terms of deepening the research of how water can be centered as healing and make sure that globally people have access to clean water, to also reach out and establish deeper connections with the Indigenous people in my community, and also to continue to work with and work that Melly is doing and Diversity and Aquatics is doing, to make sure these voices not only are around the table, but they're building the table we'd like to see in the world.
Beautiful. Sam, let's go back there real quick.
I'm from Exposure Labs, who Nelly was so kind to not call out. So we're a production impact studio. I think what I can continue to commit to, and even more, working with movement spaces to uplift stories that are important to the movement and make sure we're telling the stories that Indigenous spaces and movement leaders find important versus what we think is the story. And Jason and Crystal were kind enough to let us into their lives and their work a few months ago. So hoping to continue that work.
Hi, I commit on a personal level to bring up the issues of Indigenous people and water and within my family, who's based in the South in Atlanta. And this is not something most of them think about at all. So I want to weave this into the conversation so that they.
All right. So let's go like this now, okay? Zigzag.
Oh, Jason and Doc, I'm glad you really felt our presentation this morning. My commitment is I'd like to work with your organization in building that connection that we talked about this morning in terms of learn to swim with respect to the water with some of the resources that I may have access to some financial resources to build a pilot program that we could hopefully replicate in other places around the country.
My commitment is to share what I've learned here today with my colleagues that are not in the room, and to encourage my organization to kind of reach out and build relationships with Indigenous communities.
My commitment is to deepen my knowledge of Indigenous people, traditions, and practices around water, and to figure out or to learn from there what could be done, what's missing, what was lost. And also in particular in Broward County, Florida, to do more work with the Seminole Tribe of Florida and the Black Seminole Tribe of Florida to bring them to the water and have a voice in this space.
My name is Anna Jeffries. I'm just going to continue to show up for my family, my Kita, and also to what I already do is teach our history, teach our language, teach our songs, teach our dances to the people of our tribe.
Same consensus, trying to understand the Indigenous community more myself, seeing as I do come from a background where colonization has killed off, the Taino aspect of my culture. So also understanding that as well would probably be a great thing for me to understand as I get older.
My action, like what I do with the Indigenous, my family is the same with the African American community. That's practice patience. Because I come from elders who are warriors, so that's what I'll continue.
My commitment would be to just show some type of support in any way possible to Indigenous people, whether it's through water safety or access to water.
My commitment as a part of the social media to make sure that our network is hearing about the conversation.
My commitment would be to reevaluate my relationship with water, nature, rural, learn more history, and hope that branches out to the people around me.
I'm a painter, and my commitment would be to deepen my knowledge on trust and amplify those voices whenever I can to my community.
I'll go next. As well as, I think it's deepening the knowledge and providing a platform, utilizing our platform and working together. What I hear is community here, and to stay connected with each other and to amplify if there's any way that I can help our organization or we can connect to others, that we do that. Because there's things that come across our table that are grants and opportunities that may say water safety, but I'm learning in this space even more so. I had a surface level understanding, but an even deeper learning is needed. And then I've grown through this just in the last few hours, and to be able to provide that in this space. So anyway.
Piggyback off of that, what you just said, that my commitment is to learn more and get even further, more knowledge about everybody and everything related to the water, and also try to maybe spread the word, and also find maybe other connections that we haven't heard about or know about, and connect them.
I don't have a commitment. I just have a lot of ideas floating around right now. It's so I work with war-torn communities, and one of the can't call it a country, it's a failed state, Somalia, and it's the Horn of Africa. So when you have a failed state, there's no government, there's nobody who's coming to help you. So what this country and every country around the world is doing is dumping waste off the coast of Somalia. And the United States military is fully aware. And there's no Coast Guard.
off the coast of Africa, except in South Africa. Because the Coast Guard is a law enforcement waters. So when you have waters that are not protected and you have no government, you really don't know what to do, but do what Indigenous people all over the world do, is do it themselves. But this is not a game. It's not a small game. Dumpers are armed and these ships are huge. So I'm trying to figure out, who do I connect with in this room or that can connect those communities, which are fishing communities. They call them pirates. They're not pirates, they're fighting dumpers, right? Trying to figure out right now in my mind, who around here would be of use to them, knowing that how far away they are from buildings like in the UN where these conversations happen. So I don't have a commitment, but I'm getting a connection somehow. And just to explore that connection and see what we can do in the case of war-torn countries.
If you can go out just so people taking commitments after the session on what they would do to support what we enter.
Hi everyone, I'm Lilian Akwen from Cameroon. I'm the CEO of an organization, As We Do. So as we are going to do it together, I think water is life, because water is everything. From our bodies, 60% is water. Our blood, 80% is water. And then if we have to look at our daily lives, we use water in everything, cleaning, every domestic work. When it comes even to the food we take, part of it is water. Without water, we cannot live. So I think it's a wonderful initiative working with people in this domain, because water is so refreshing. It rejuvenates. The climate, the environment, the ecosystem, everything is water. So working with my sister Emily from Cameroon, I would very much like that if we can open up to other continents, to other regions, because when we started initially, I don't think Cameroon was one of the areas of coverage. But from this forum, I think we can extend, and we are coming in to support everything that has to do with water, because we work in that area, and that's why we are here in the UN for the Water Conference to commemorate this Water Day. Thank you so much.
Okay. We have to be out of here like in 5 minutes, so.
Okay. My commitment as an Indigenous Aymara woman is to make possible to live in harmony with our values, principles, to take care about our Mother Earth.
My commitment as a local policymaker is to practice what Jason said about approaching people with the water in me honors the water in you, even as I insist that we hold them accountable, even as I try to get my community to really understand that they need to hold us accountable, and that we can do that while honoring each other's water. Yes. We can do both, and we must do both. So that's my commitment.
So my commitment as a filmmaker is to continue to tell these stories of water, of my Indigenous brothers and sisters, of my community from South Florida, my extended community across the nation, that it is so important that I'm kind of reeling in my own journey with water, right? From health and fitness to spirituality to sustenance in life, and how important it is to share all of those messages. So as I show my films, I'm going to attach all of those messages and continue to engage and educate people about our causes here as a community.
I guess my commitment would be just extending what other people said about just broadening my knowledge on the history of Indigenous peoples within this country and abroad, because it's a fascinating history. It's one that I can't wait to
as a researcher, especially in the field of water, is to provide an outlet for the sometimes silenced voices, a fair outlet. Yeah, and just show the non-mainstream relationship with water that we can have.
So my commitment as someone with Waves Network would be to work with everyone here so we build a network, a movement that can take all what we want to do here today to the places we want to get it.
What Steve said, but we're so grateful that we're able to be in this space to learn from everyone. And I think our commitment really is to continue to learn more and to also continue to hold space and support your conversations and networking at our space at City Center. So thank you.
Our commitment, we're going to just continue to work locally in our communities, to work with allies and accomplices, to educate, continue to educate about the water, as well as internationally around the world, and understanding their differences that they have with their relationship with water.
I guess I would say continue following those original instructions of responsibility over rights, and staying in solidarity with relatives globally because they're the same challenges. We know this. We just have a better way of hiding it in this country. And if we start making this a global thing, then all of these people will have the pressure, right?
Yeah, so hi everyone. So I attended this event the other day where they presented the Indigenous Peoples Declaration for the 2023 UN Water Conference. And this was with the Center for Earth Ethics. So, I commit to, sharing more with all of you, or really just learning more about everyone's stories, and also the work that I do with faith communities, ensuring that the Indigenous voices are always included in there as well.
All right, so you see Luis Alvarenga, he's the producer of the film company.
Okay, danos voz.
Un compromiso, pero bien rápido porque nos tenemos que ir. So,
Sí.
ahora.
Bueno, mi compromiso es seguir trabajando por mi pueblo, por mi gente, por más que todo por las mujeres y los niños, por nuestros recursos naturales, seguir representando a mi cultura, dando a conocer la cosmovisión indígena, pero asimismo exigiendo el respeto que debe haber hacia el pueblo Miskitu.
My commitment is to work in my territory, specifically with women and children. I want to continue to work for this respect and that our nature resources be protected. And myself as a filmmaker, and speak for both of us, we are committed to do a feature film with Wildres, because we thought this short, it was too short. And we are already getting funding for that. So you will be hearing from us from a feature film with Wildres and her sister, an incredible story here in Honduras. So thank you all so much for this amazing opportunity.